the first major document that you will have to circle around to your stakeholders is what we call a project charter. So the project charter defines the high level scope, all of those other items that will have to be excluded in the scope, the objectives, milestones, and timeline. As you can see, you should be careful that this is high level. So when you say high level, the project's charter is like a draft, right? This is not yet, if I will, have an analogy with a contract, this is a contract which is not notarized by the lawyer, right? Because this is a draft. But at least you have something to start on. The project charter is something that the stakeholders, if they see this document, will authorize that the project is already valid and legitimate, and you can start with the project. So normally this is circulated around as a memo and an email notifying everybody that the project is already alive. And we already have an agreement on the scope, high level scope, objectives, milestones, and timelines. So who are the project stakeholders? So people or groups positively or negatively affected by the project are all stakeholders, right? So as you can see, it comes from a diverse group of people, like, for example, your legal team can be a stakeholder. External vendors can be a stakeholder. Department heads will be a stakeholder. Your senior leadership are stakeholders. Staff can be stakeholders. And of course, the whole project team are stakeholders. As we have said, the project stakeholders comes from a diverse group of individuals and people. All those that have influence over the project, either directly or indirectly. So in order to have a good understanding of your stakeholders, what I do is I produce a stakeholder matrix, right? So I clearly define or put in a table who all of the major stakeholders are. And of course, what what are their titles, which department or organization they belong to, and I normally categorize them. For example, if they are a member of a project team, or they are the owner, or they are a vendor, I clearly define all of my stakeholders. Actually, I even classify them if they have a high impact or medium impact to the project. So even the influence that they bring into the project, I normally put categorization so that I will understand. For example, if there's a conflict in the project, who would be the most influential of all that I need to satisfy? Okay? And it's also important to have your stakeholder matrix, because when you do the status report, you will have to include each and every stakeholders that needs to have on the status of the project. So the requirements document is just an appendix, also of the project charter. The major document that you have to produce is the project charter, the high level contract, right, that we have mentioned. But I specified here a requirements document that should be attached or should be an appendix to the project charter, so that there would be no other things that will be left behind in defining the requirements, because the requirements list is already the outline of your scope, right? So if you miss a requirement, you chances are you will also miss the scope of the project. So a good practice is to list down all of the requirements of your project and have a requirements document that will be an appendix of the project charter. So this is an iterative process, right? You have to For example, this is your initial list, and then you will have to go back to your stakeholders again. Is this correct? Am I correct that these are only the requirements that we need? Maybe they will have some comments, right? And then you will have to come up with an updated list again. So it's a constant cycle that you have to be regularly reviewing with your major stakeholders. So as I mentioned, I'm putting emphasis on the requirements because the initiation is really, or the planning would not be accurate if you have not clearly defined your requirements. So as you can see here, I've shown a diagram again of the architecture of your ORAN network. And there are so many things that you will have to list down, right? And come up with each and every requirement for each segment of the architecture. So for example, your distributed unit, your central unit, right? Radio unit, you will have to define all requirements for each major category of the architecture. So if you need to produce some memo just to clear the requirements, right? Please do so. As I've said, for me, as a practitioner of project management, I normally produce a stakeholder matrix. So it's just like a table. And then I will come up with my requirements document that I normally attach as an appendix to my project charter. So always have a handy microscope so that you will see if you have missed anything. So the project charter normally will have this the project objective, your high-level timeline, the specific roles and responsibilities of the project team, including the stakeholders, of course, stakeholder matrix. And the most important is to define the project requirements. And as you can see in the last item, this serves as a contract so that the project is already authorized to start and move along because all of the major stakeholders have already agreed to the high level scope of the project. So as you can see, this is a typical example. So a project charter can be a one-pager or maybe 5 or 10 pages depending on the appendix that you need to attach to it. But basically, what I'm showing you are the most important contents of a project charter. So in the project charter, you should have at least the project title, the start and end date of your project, the project manager who's handling the project, or in some cases, they are called program managers because of the size of the project. And then, of course, your sponsor. Then you will identify or put into the charter at least the objective, right? And then you will have to put the initial scope. And under that initial scope, what are the deliverables? You should also be able to identify the risks and issues and the assumptions that you will have to publish as well. For example, if there are limitations in the terrain and you cannot deploy cell sites in that area, you have to provide those assumptions. And of course, the financials, the initial cost of the project, and then the high-level schedule. So we're done with the project charter. But this is how you organize the plan before the project is authorized, right? So normally you will have, during your initiation phase, you will have a kickoff meeting. You will have an organization and plan for it. Determine all the tasks or major activities that needs to be done. You should create a high-level schedule, and also included in the project charter is how you're going to communicate or maybe publish status reports as a draft, right? And you will have to create the project charter document. So the next document that we will have to produce is the project management plan. So that once you're done with the project charter, right? So as I've said, the project charter is just an initial contract. It's a contract that is not notarized by the lawyer. That's what I call them. But you have the go signal to go ahead with the project because you already have your project charter and you have already published it to your stakeholders. Now, the next step is really to produce the real contract. And that is what we call in project management lifecycle, the project plan. So this is the next document that you will have to produce. Now, what is inside the project plan? The project plan is basically very similar to your project charter. But this time, the project plan is already refined, right? All of the high-level planning, scoping, scheduling will not be high-level anymore. Once you go to the project plan, those high-level scheduling and costing will have to be the final one. And every schedule should be detailed, right? So each and every major activity, tasks, and sub-tasks will now have to be included in your project schedule. So that's the major difference of a project charter to your project plan. So the project plan, if I will again use my analogy in a contract, the project plan is a contract that is already notarized. This is the real thing. So once you turn over the project to your stakeholders or to operations, what they will look at is the project plan. If all the requirements in the project plan were served or not. Otherwise, they will not accept your project as completed. So the project information that will be included in your project plan is already the specific scope and objectives, the final stakeholders and contacts, the final requirements, right? As I've said, you normally go over your list of requirements, right? But this time, once it's already in the project plan, that's it, right? There should be no more changes, if possible, in the requirements. Otherwise, your project will be never ending. Now, your schedule should always be updated as well, but this time up to the granular tasks and subtasks. And then in your scheduling, you have to publish milestones. Milestones are specific markers in the project schedule that have to be met. And then, of course, the deliverables that are included in that milestone. Milestones are just markers, like specific dates. But included in the marker should be the objective, what has been accomplished during that date. That's why milestone and deliverables come together. But milestones are just markers, major markers in your schedule. And then you should also be aware of the issues that are that have transpired when you're going to the execution phase, and you should be mindful of that because it will also be included in your project plan. But normally, the things that are included in the project plan are the risk issues normally comes when you do the execution phase already. The other thing that we need to be careful with our project is we need to have a central location for all our documents. So nowadays, it's very easy, right? We have a shared drive or a shared portal wherein all of the information concerning a project or a major program are all uploaded there. So it depends on you if which stakeholder you will have or grant access to it as a viewer, or for example, if you're part of the project team, you can have edit rights so that you can uh, what do you call this, edit the requirements or the updates of the reports. But it depends on the people that will have that rights. So this is also a living document because the updates can come in later. So all of our templates should also be placed in the shared drive, and all the historical artifacts. So when you do the planning, as I've said previously, in your project plan, this is the real thing, right? All of the all of your major activities you have to do in a project will now be in a, what you call this, a granular form, because the task will have to be break down into subtasks, right? And in project management, the tasks and the subtasks that we define, we normally call them work breakdown structure. So work breakdown structure is just another term for the tasks and subtasks under each major activity. As you can see here, the project here is a website. So each major activity is defined as a work breakdown structure up to the subtask. So once you have defined all the tasks, or you have completed your work breakdown structure, you are now ready to come up with your formal project schedule or your uh, final project schedule. Remember, in the project charter, what we do is a high-level project schedule. Once you have your project plan, this is it, right? The project schedule uh, should include all the tasks that will have to be done to complete the project. So you should list all of the tasks. And normally we have a tool for it that we use in project management, right? The Microsoft project. But in most cases, they also use Smartsheet, right? But what's important is to list each major activity and divide them to tasks and subtasks, so that you can clearly define the duration of each major activity, each major task, each subtask, and when you total all of them, you will come up with your full schedule or the final project schedule that you have to put in your project plan. So this is how I do it, right? I normally come up with the task list, and each task list has a resource person assigned to it. And then you will have to define the start and finish of each task, so that you can come up with the, once you add all of them, you can come up with the complete project schedule. So this is what we call the the work breakdown structure work packages. So once you're done with your complete or adding all of your work breakdown structure or tasks, then you can come up with a schedule. So this is how it looks like, right? So if you have a Gantt chart, a simple Gantt chart, you will be able to define how many weeks is a major activity, and then you can publish them in parallel with each other, so that you will clearly see which major activity or tasks are overlapping with each other, or which task is dependent on which task, right? So you can clearly line them up, and you can have a schedule in weeks, but normally it's also in days. and you will have a clear picture of the whole duration of the project. So this is what I was mentioning to you earlier. As you can see, if you will see in this diagram, there is a symbol that is like a diamond here. Let me place my cursor, right? So when you have something like that, that is a milestone. So there is a specific date that you need to target, or maybe a date that is very significant that you will have to complete a major activity during that date. So those icons, or which are diamond shape, are milestones. And this is the project schedule that you will have to put in your project plan. The project plan includes the goals and objectives, the scope, your assumptions, the risks and constraints are also there, and of course the project management approach and all the attachments. And the most important thing in a project management plan is the sign off of all the stakeholders, especially the major ones. And normally it's in the last page. Even the responsibilities are also included in your project plan. So as you can see here, you will place all the stakeholders and they will have to sign off on the project plan. So once the project plan is already signed, there should be no more changes to the requirements or to the scope of your project, because you already agreed to it. So at least you have an idea now of how a project plan looks like, a formal document of your project management cycle.